Okay, well, I'm going to go, this is a brand new subject, and it has to do with history. We, in order to understand our situation here in the world, how we got to this place and what happened and everything, we need to look into our past and begin to understand the situation of the past. It's really important. A lot of times people tend to think that, well, we don't really need to know that. We know where we are now, and we just need to go forward. But that is not the nature of life. When we're going to look at something called the Fibonacci series a little later. It's a series that goes 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34, 55, and it keeps going. And all it is just, if you take 3 segments of it, 3, 5, and 8, it's just you're adding 3 to 5 and you get 8, and 8, 5 and 8 you get 13, and 8 and 13 you get 21, and 13, 21 you get 34. It's an adding. This particular series is called the Fibonacci or Fibonacci series, and it is linked to many different aspects of organic chemistry and organic life. And specifically to one of them, of the areas, is plant life. And plants, when they grow, they tend to grow according to this particular series. In other words, the plant will grow 1 leaf, and then it'll grow 1 more, and then it'll come out with 2, and then 3, and then 5, and then 8. This is one of the series that is used over and over and over again. And the little plant, it needs to be able to have a pattern, to know where to go. And so the plant, when it's sitting here with 5 leaves, all it has to do is look into its past to see that it grew 3. Combine that with where it is, and it now knows where to go. It knows that 8 is the amount. When it gets to 8, it looks into its past and sees that it's 5 and knows that 13 is the place to go. And in the same way, we need to, time is also divided into this 3-ness. Maybe I should just, well, I'll finish this statement and go back to the other one. Time, we have this past, present, and this future. And in order for us to know where the proper place for us to be or what to do in the future, we have to combine our present with our past. If we don't know what our past is, we're lost. Absolutely lost, no matter what you think of yourself or where you're going. You don't know where you're going. You don't have a future. A future could be anything. You don't know where it goes. And so we need to know what happened and what got us to where we are in order to proceed. And just to take this one step further, we live in what is often called good and evil consciousness and sometimes called polarity consciousness. You know, where things are good and bad and black and white, etc. But there is no such thing as this. You need to see this point real quickly. There is no polarity consciousness, and no polarity anything. No matter what polarity you think of, you're going to realize that there is a third component. If you think of the earth and the sun, or male and female, or black and white, or up and down, or hot and cold, with the earth and the sun, there's going to be the moon. With male and female, there's going to be the child. With black and white, there's going to be gray. With up and down, there's the middle. With what was the other? Hot and cold, there's going to be warm. No matter what the polarity is, there's always this thing in the middle. There's 3 parts. The entire fabric of the universe is made of proton, electron, and neutron. And it's 3-ness. Our time is past, present, and future. Our space is the XYZ axis. It's the nature of this particular level of consciousness. This is how we interpret our reality. It may have there's other ways to interpret it, but this is the way we interpret it. Every mathematical sequence in existence, except for one, which is the golden mean, which created all the other ones. You only need 3 components in it to know the entire sequence. And so we live in a tri-world, the Holy Trinity. And so we need to know we have to know two of the components to know what the other one is. You could do it the other way around. You could subtract this one from this one. You could, if you knew your future, you could know what your past was. You could subtract your present from your future, and you'd know where you've been. And so, for this reason, I have been asked to discuss history for about 2 hours or something like that, for a long period of time. And so, here we go. Now, I'm going to combine, first of all, I used to give this history lesson strictly from Thoth's point of view, who is someone who's been around here for a long time. Thoth just says, well, there were these giants on the world. And that's where he starts out. He says there was these giants here. He didn't say where they came from or who they were or what they were. He just said there were these giants. It isn't just Thoth who says that. If you take the Bible and you go into Genesis and you go to chapter 6, which is a very interesting chapter, it says, "And it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, and that the sons of God," this is plural, people, sons of God, "saw the daughters of men, and that they were fair, and they took them wives of all of which they chose. And the Lord said, My spirit shall not always strive with man." This is another statement people have wondered about. "For that he also is flesh. Yet his days shall be 120. And the number 4 it says, "And there were giants in the earth in those days." And also, after that, when the sons of God came in to the daughters of men, and they bare children unto them, and the same became mighty men, which were of old men of renown. Who are these sons of God? And, plural. And this is not talking about a single one. And this is talking about God being made of flesh. And according to Thoth, on a 4th dimensional level, there were 7 of the giants that came together and dropped their bodies and merged themselves into spheres of light, and that these formed the flower of life pattern, and that a flame appeared, which was about 4 feet tall, a blue-white flame, which was pure prana, which is life force energy, which became the ovum, the female ovum, and then that was put into the halls of Amenti, which is a dimensional fold in space that the Egyptians talk about, which is really the womb of the earth, which is where the starseed and all the 500 million years of races have been created from. This is a whole other subject. This halls of Amenti is usually out beyond the bubble. There's a membrane outside the earth we don't know about, which is 440,000 miles out, and on the other side of that is usually where the halls of Amenti is located. It's a dimensional fold time that moves with the earth, but on one overtone higher than the earth. So it's not visible to the earth, but it's very accessible. And it's folded into the shape, the outside of it anyway, it's folded into the shape of a womb. Anyway, the flame was placed there, and as soon as it was placed there, according to Thoth, there was a family, 32 members of both 16 males and 16 females from the star Sirius, who were the male outside, the sperm that comes from outside the system, that came from the alien aspect that came from outside the system to come in and be the daddy. And it was all prearranged and ordained on all kinds of levels, on very high level of consciousness, whatever they're in the part where they think an orange they could have one in their hand and peel it. They thought that there were 32 slabs of rose quartz granite laying there around the flame, and there was. And they laid down male, female around this flame and merged or conceived with the flame, the ovum. For 2,000 years they merged with this. You see, in human terms, birth takes so long and conception takes so long and the whole process is 9 months, but on a planetary level, it's much longer. It's the same process, just much, much, much longer. Then you go back to the actual physical archaeological records and you go back first let me throw another side trip in here. We had a theory called the Eve's theory, where they had checked the DNA and a particular aspect of the DNA and found an overlapping process where they were able to trace back through all the races of the world back to a single human being, which was this black female in this very specific valley in southeastern Africa. Now, some people are beginning to debate that theory now, but still, the evidence is incredible. It is consistent throughout the African creation stories, and it's called Gondwana land. And you can read the creation stories, which I've done. I went out and read a whole bunch of these along all the western shores of Africa. They all have different ideas about how creation took place, but they all consistently say that we came from an island to the west called Gondwana land. They all say that. Every one of them I read anyway, though they have real different ideas about the rest of it. And so it says that's where we started out, which is this place down in here. It was a large, it could almost be a continent. And it could have been touching here, or it may have been partly touching and partly separated. I don't know. When he gave me all of this like that, and that was the one piece that I never got clear in my mind, though from then on in I got it pretty clear. And I'm still not really sure. I don't think it was this big. Smaller. And I remember I drew this drawing a long time ago. And that they basically isolated us for a long time until we got to a certain level of development. And then they took us into southeastern Africa and began working the mines. And then from there up into the area of Iraq and up in there. And then from there, I believe that it was Cain who went into the Americas, what we now call South America, and in there. And but there was another aspect of this, the part that came out of the Adam and Eve part, which evidently was the part that was allowed to proceed after this went down. There was a huge... we stayed in here for a long period of time, and I don't really know what it was. We're talking about tens of thousands of years. Until finally, there was a point here when we had a pole shift, and this whole aspect sank and left, and it was gone. Again, I'm not real clear on the details of all of this, but one way or another, the survivors of Adam and Eve up in here made their way over to this area over in here into the Pacific. Exactly how that, and according to Thoth, this area here, when it went down, this area came up. They were simultaneously on the same moment when this took place. But there was a time in about 1910, 11, 12, and there, 1915, when we began to rapidly waking up. What the process that's now going on right now started then. And then in 1914, World War I came along and just blew us right out of the water. And it wasn't until the 60s that we began to waken up again. But during that time of the early 1900s, we had proof that Lemuria was there. And at this point, we've completely forgotten the proof that we had. There was people like James Churchward and Laplosion, a Frenchman, who were very famous in tracking. They were in the papers all the time talking about Lemuria and Atlantis and the possibilities of all of this. And Churchward wrote several books on it, so both of them did actually. And one of the subjects, there's a book written called Atlantis, the Mother of Empires. I think it was about 1913, somewhere back in there. It's an old book and that I got my hands on, and there was some information in that book that was very, very amazing that they had that information. Back as far as that time, they had discovered near the area of Easter Island, that there were these coral rings that extended out into the Pacific Ocean as far as they could determine, going out in there. The coral rings were unusual in the sense that coral can only grow 150 feet below the surface of the water. These rings were 1,800 feet deep, meaning that the island had to be above the water and slowly come down, very slowly, so that the coral can continue to form, and yet you can see how slow that would have to be for the coral to form, and yet for it to continue and not die, and then end up being 1,800 feet deep. And so they saw these things going off in there, and then at the same time they had discovered that the fauna and the flora that stretched from Easter Island all the way up, there's a series of islands that goes up from Easter Island all the way through the Tahitian Islands, all the way up to the Hawaiian Islands. And the fauna and the flora on all just that chain of islands that stretches through there is all the same. It's identical. There's the same plants, the same trees, the same bugs, the same bacteria, same everything else like that. And there's no way that could have taken place unless there had been a landmass much closer stretched in there. So the understanding of that, along with all these coral rings that were stretched under there that were on the floor, they surmised that there had to be a continent. Though the continent was not a physical continent, according to Thoth, it was a series of islands, lots and lots and lots of islands, forming what would be like a landmass, but with no solid, total, complete length. It was just thousands and thousands of islands that stretched down there. That outer length running from basically from Kauai all the way down to Easter Island, just now beginning to return to. We progressed to a very, very high level of technology, a different kind of technology, totally unheard of and unknown these days. It was a right brain technology, female, based upon psychotronics and these kinds of things that we are just beginning to become a little aware of, only they had developed that to the level that we have developed our left brain logical technology. And they were able to do, you can do anything from that aspect as well as from the female aspect as well as you can from there. And we were becoming a female. We were becoming, an evolutionary pattern has to become either male or female. And we were becoming a young female. By the time that Lemuria was finished, before it went down, we were equivalent to about a 12-year-old girl. And everything was going very well. And the Syrians, who monitored all of this and have remained, they're immortal, they remained alive during this whole time watching it, everything was going just great and fine. Everything was going just great and fine. There was no problems. It was looking really, really, really good. And then something happened that we have never quite survived from. We've never come out of it. And we're going to have to go in about 5 minutes to lunch, but when we get back I'll tell you what happened, and it's the most important part is what happened when we shifted from there to Atlantis. Some things took place that changed the course of our evolutionary pattern. According to Thoth, they flew, and exactly how I don't know, but they went here to this island here. And this is not this was not this big. This is a lousy drawing. That's what this is. There they did something kind of, I mean, if you were watching them, you would think they were probably off their rocker, kind of. They first took the island, which is, it looks kind of like that. And the first thing they did was they made a wall right down the middle, dividing the island in two. This wall was about 20 feet thick and about 40 feet high. It sealed it off. There's no way to get from one side to the other. And then they built a minor wall running this way. dividing it into 4 quadrants. What they were doing, without understanding the human brain too much, this was a person's head. That's their nose, I guess. They're looking down from the top. You have these left and right hemisphere. You have the left hemisphere over here and the right one here. And the left one is male and the right one is female. But then there's another division in there, like this. There's a front and a back aspect of this. And this front one, if you were to put this word love here, the left front aspect of the human being sees everything logically. In other words, it sees it like it is. Of course, it sees it upside down and all that stuff, but anyway, it sees it logically like this. But the right side over here inverts it like this and sees it in a mirror image, one back to the other. And this one is logical, and this one you could say is not logical, but it has its logic to it. But this one also has a reflection. It goes like this. And then there is another reflection that goes like this. So this side reflects that side, and this side reflects that side. And that this one up here is based on the triangle and the square. And that's the logic. When we get into the geometries, this will make more sense. But this is the logic of the logic that's behind the male side. The female side doesn't have a logical side forward. I'll just use this as a symbol for it. She has an experiential side forward. And so the male and female seem so different in their approach to the reality, of interpreting the reality. But the male side is based on a triangle and square. The geometrical aspect is so logical, has an experiential aspect to it also. It's just that it's back, it's hidden. And the female has a logical side to her unlogical nature, which appears to man anyway, and which is not based on the triangle and the square, but is based on the, oops, almost made a hexagon there. It is based on the pentagon. And so there is this logic. Both sides are absolutely logical if you understand what's going on. She's just as logical as he is, but based on a different kind of logic. But she's got a mirror image thing where her experiential thing is forward and his experiential thing is to the back. And by experiential, as you'll see here, and I'll try to demonstrate this even to us here, is that every single line in sacred geometry has a human experience associated with it. And so all your geometry has experience, but experience always has geometry associated with it. Even love. You would never think that love is geometrical, but it is. Our scientists have already established this, beyond any doubt. It's way back in there later, but later you'll see this. I'll show you the geometries of it. But there was a man, one of the first persons that I know of was Dan Winter out of New York, Eden, New York, who was doing the research of someone else, actually, I believe. And he was putting people on biofeedbacks systems onto monitors so they can see what was happening in a sine wave pattern, and discovered that it's in there. Yeah, no, I don't need it though. Discovered that there were that there were a very specific sine wave signature associated specifically with every emotional response. And so that they could get to the place where they could have people in other rooms just looking at the screen and just looking at the sine wave signatures and can tell you just what that person's feeling. But by studying the sacred geometry around the sine wave signatures can be reduced to angles, and all angles can then further be reduced to geometrical patterns. Or the other way around. You can take geometrical patterns or shapes and find out their angles and reduce them into sine wave signatures. People like Michael Helios is one who's real good at that, converting shape into sound. And so what Dan found out is that there is a direct relationship between emotions and sine wave signatures, and then through work discovered that there were very specific shapes associated with that, and then through deeper work discovered that there was very specific geometrical pattern behind all emotion. That there was one pattern that tied them all together. And that pattern, we'll see a little bit later what that was. And then there was another person called Kleins, right? Well, I've got an article out of a Wall Street Journal here, where he also has totally on his own in another direction come up with the same thing, that emotions have shape associated with them. And so it seems so weird to say this, and you're like, love has shape. I mean, except when you see it walking down the beach, maybe you see it. But you don't think of it as angles and cubes and squares and things like this. But it does. I'll be able to go into that deeper when we get to that level of geometry. We're still, this whole day is just introduction. That's all it is. On the main island, they laid out the tree of life. They did this. Is this right? No, that's not right. There's another one somewhere.
There's another one.
It's not in here. Where? Here? Here?
Yeah.
In there?
The bottom has two sides.
Okay, it's something like that. We all know what it is. They laid out the tree of life on there. They did it with their thoughts and their emotions, and they created a standing wave pattern on the surface, the geographical surface of Atlantis, according to Thoth. And they kept this pattern going, and they did something that I don't know what he means by it. He says they breathed life into it. I don't know exactly what that means. I couldn't understand what it meant, but they made it a living form. And he said it began to create these vortex energies that rotated out of each one of these places. And that there were 8 of these places that were, well, let's put it another way. The survivors from Lemuria were then called forth to come, and they all in their own place, and they just knew that they were supposed to go, and they began to migrate across the country over toward Atlantis, and they made their way toward there. However, remember, they were equivalent to about a 12-year-old girl. They were immature. They had not completed themselves. And there were certain areas of experience, of human experience, that they had not completed. And they had only completed 8 of the 10 areas. Now again, I don't really know what that means either. But there were 2 areas in here somewhere that they had not completed. And so when they were pulled to Atlantis and they were brought here, they were pulled to these spots. These spots, by the way, he said, this pattern was laid out on the surface to the accuracy of a single atom. So we're talking about an extremely accurate pattern. And these cities were placed on these exact spots. There were eventually 10 cities, 10 major cities in Atlantis. And but the survivors from Lemuria went to 8 of these places. There were 2 places that were completely vacant. It was just nobody's nature yet. Nobody had developed into that nature. And then, and what life does, I mean, I don't know if these guys thought about this far enough along the line when they were doing this, but what happens with life is you leave a space open and life fills it. It's just automatic. The one I like to use is like the freeway. You know, when you're on the freeway and you let the car in front of you get a little bit too far ahead of you. Fills right in. It's the same kind of thing. They had a couple spaces open, and life filled them in. The first one, the one that came in first, was from extraterrestrial. I don't know where it was from. He never really clearly made this clear, but they were not a problem when they came in. And they got permission. They asked permission to come in. So there was nothing illegal or anything else like that. But this was the Hebrews. According to Thoth, they came from somewhere else. They had failed. They did not make it to the next level and had to repeat it. It's like a child going to school over again in another grade. They had to repeat it over. They were extremely advanced race relative to us because they had been through a lot of things that we were about to go through. And so when they came in, they brought in a great deal of information that we didn't even know about yet or anything. And there was no real problem with them. And if it had not been for the next one, I don't think there would even be a problem today. It would have been probably a very clean integration. However, the last one, the 10th one that came in, was a real problem, and is a problem from the moment they came in, the very moment that they came in, to this very moment right now. And the struggle has still been going on. And it sounds funny where they came from. Again, realize I said this on tape 7.5 years ago. When I first started saying it, it sounded even weird to me, but I had to repeat what he told me. And I had no kind of external evidence to support this in any way at all. But he said that they came from Mars. And that and it wasn't from Mars of today, or even close to today, but it's from Mars from a long, long time ago.